Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey guys, we're here today with Brianna Miller and Marcus Miller. And
Ooh,
Yeah.
some of our
Whoa.
fans.
we're going to have a really great episode today that we've already pre-recorded. But before we jump into that, we wanted to share some really cool things. We have 1 week left before Living Fully Alive launches
1
minutes
week.
ago. So really big things happening. Last
You
minute.
guys need to go sign up right now. It's going to change your life. It's going to make your relationships better. It's going to help you connect to God easier. And it's going to make you feel less crazy in life in general. I'm going to read something that somebody wrote us about Living
Yes.
Fully Alive. Ready? Here we go. The content has been blowing my mind and opening up my heart week after week. I laughed so much. She capitalized it. Cried and snotted my way through many weeks. Got triggered, had encounters with love, and realized that I've been sitting on the judgment seat of my life and I've actually been a pretty harsh judge. I loved every single part and every single week. The bonus videos with the consultants were so helpful. You were in them, Marcus.
I was.
And made me cry. The codependency one freaking nailed it. This was so much more than an e-course. I love this. It was an encounter with my heart, which I'm starting to see is way more lovable than I thought. It was an encounter with a God who actually has more compassion and grace than I know what to do with. I'm in the beginning stages of this healing journey, but this class is changing my life.
So good. And I love that she brought up the codependency part. We're going to dive into this entire episode. We're going to talk about codependency.
Codependency.
But if you haven't gotten on board with Living Fully Alive yet, get your friends, get your family together, go on a journey as a community. You're going to love it. And we have an incredible immersion program where you get to connect to a global community through that. And you can learn more at Justin and Abi, that's abi.com. Without further ado, here we go. We're back here with Marcus Joel Miller.
That's one of my favorite tricks Marcus does is trying to figure out how to mirror someone while they're talking at the same time. You're decently good at it. When did you learn that party trick?
You know, I'm pretty sure I saw it on TV, SNL or something.
And you're like, I
But-
can do that.
Yeah.
Kind of a ventriloquist trick.
Yeah.
A little bit. Kind of.
Justin's my dummy.
Shazam. You got me good. And we have the better looking half of you here today.
Here I am.
Oh,
Not
Yeah,
yet.
sure.
It's in the belly. Your belly's big.
I am
It's
here
baby
and I
big.
have a baby inside of me. So
Mhm.
sure.
Yes. Marcus and Bree have been on our podcast before. Great episodes. If you want to listen to it from their first year of marriage, they've now been married longer.
yes.
Yep.
They've dealt with more crap, but we're not talking about marriage crap today.
We are not. But
Too bad.
Brianna's like, I got a list.
Yeah, we got tons of stuff to talk
I was
through.
ready to air all your laundry.
That's so fun. Did you add something more to that, Marcus? You want to start? No?
No. Should we start with that funny story?
We're going to jump in with a funny story from Bree. You guys make it quick, make it precise, but make it as funny as it was before we just told us.
Jeez, that's a lot of pressure.
That's a lot of pressure.
I'd also like to say that this story is 0% connected to what we're talking about today.
A little
You guys
connected.
You
just
never know.
thought-
God is involved.
It's a funny story.
Yeah. So I had a really big moment the other week.
Mhm.
I'm a diehard Bachelor fan.
That's the truth.
And a year ago, we moved to San Diego, and I have just been waiting to see someone from The Bachelor ever since I moved there, because like half the cast lives there.
Like legit, sometimes she'll be like, I don't know why I haven't seen anyone yet. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we go out on the town, and I'm like, where are they? I know they're here. Where are they? So the other week, we were on our way to an appointment, and we're trying to like grab some real quick lunch, and we walk into this place. And Marcus points.
Attempt to walk in.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. We did not get there.
Marcus all of a sudden stops me and he's like, is that Hannah G from The Bachelor?
Look at you being a good
Yeah.
husband,
Yeah. I'm so
caring
proud
about
that he
that
knew.
stuff. Yeah.
And I turn, I see her, I lock eyes with her, and I gasp. And then I immediately start sobbing. There's a lot of emotions. And I turned around and I ran out of the restaurant. I ran like a block away, and Marcus had to follow me.
I had to chase her down.
Keep in mind, you're how many months pregnant now?
I mean, I'm 6 months pregnant, but this is how I would have reacted
I
at
know,
any
I'm saying you're
point in my
carrying
life.
the picture
of a pregnant
she's hauling her
woman.
6 month.
Yeah, sure thing.
Baby body.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And there was a video because I was like, this is ridiculous. I have to record this.
Yeah.
And she like crocodile tear sobbing, and she's like, God sees me. And I was like, what? You saw some lady from The Bachelor.
I had been asking God for a long time, where the hell are these people? Finally, there was one of them. It wasn't my proudest moment. I always thought I would be very cool and collected
Like,
when I
what's
met
up?
one.
What's up?
Yeah, like, oh yeah, cool. I saw you on the show. Not what happened.
No.
But it was a really good moment for me.
Thank you. That delighted me.
That is such.
Yes.
And then you walked back.
You
and
had to
tried
go back.
Yeah, we had to go
Oh
back.
yeah,
'cause-
we still needed food. I didn't want to go back in. I was humiliated in front of this girl, but I
Aw.
marched back in there, acted like
And
a
she
normal
had
human being.
huge sunglasses on. She had,
Hannah
Hannah was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is not working. So like we walked back, and she like has covered up her face, and she's
Yeah.
like cowering by her mom.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That
I
is
wonder
funny.
what she thought your reaction meant. Because like your reaction was like, so excited. Like you were so excited.
What did she think?
What did she think? Like somebody sees her and just cries.
Yeah,
Are they sad? Are they mad at her? Do they feel like her life sucks? Like what does she think?
I know. Hannah G, if you're listening somewhere out there, you can follow me on Instagram, Brianna J. Miller. We can talk about it.
Oh, it's hysterical.
I tried to get. I was like, babe, do you want a picture? Like that was a huge reaction. Should we just
Totally.
like make this count and get a
Yeah.
photo? And she's like, I can't face
I could
her.
never. I had to keep the last scrap of pride that I still had.
Dignity.
Yeah.
Your 1 ounce of it that you
Yeah,
had
I
left.
couldn't ask for a picture after that.
Oh my gosh.
That is the best thing ever. Well, today we're going to be talking about The Bachelor.
A good episode.
We're gonna be talking about some more God stuff.
Yeah, we are. I'm really excited about the series that we're doing with Marcus and Brianna today about some misconceptions that people have in Christianity that are not biblical around emotional health topics.
Totally.
And so today,
Especially not biblical in like extremes
yes,
of like, because we're honestly we're trying to approach concepts, and there are always two sides to a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this here that we're sharing a side because we've seen the extreme side.
Yeah.
And so we're addressing that. Yes.
So what he's saying cryptically, because you don't know what concept we're talking about,
Oh, yeah.
is we're talking about codependency today.
Yes.
Because the church is notorious for helping people become codependent or fueling their codependency or glorifying
it.
Yes.
and worshiping their codependency.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, it's easy to become codependent because most of us were raised in situations where codependency was running amok. And so we learned it, and then we go to church, and then it's like applauded. So we step into it and agree with it.
Yeah, you're viewed as very much more spiritual the more codependent you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way that
and
you lay your life
They
down.
wouldn't label it as that, right? They wouldn't say this is codependency. It's like
No.
that's being a good Christian.
Yes.
A good Christian.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It is a celebrated dysfunction in church
Yeah.
to be codependent.
Well, let's talk about what codependency actually means and
Yeah.
what you're even saying.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw out some like ideas
Uh-huh.
so that you can understand, oh, that's where I might see it in myself. So I would say codependency is the compulsive need for approval from others.
Yeah.
So if I am constantly like, how do I win them over? How do I convince them? How do I be enough for them?
Yeah.
I am being codependent because my world is revolving on their approval.
Yes. Which is literally, I mean, church builds it like it builds on you need the pastors to pay attention, to like you. You need the authorities to like you. If not, you could get kicked out. You could lose the connection that you need. I mean, I remember growing up, the shepherding movement was much more of a thing where it was like they're like, we need to speak into your life, and which is not in and of itself a bad concept, to have people that can see outside of your triggers and your worldview to help give you guidance. But the concept would be that you had to have permission. I mean, Pizzi was in a church. I don't know why I name called her. A ton of my friends.
A lady she knows.
Lots of people I know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know why I picked one person, because I can think of like 10 off the top of my head, where they had to have permission from a leader in order to do something with their life.
Everything was about getting approval from someone else within the environment that seemed to have more authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when you're saying that, I'm like, oh, another way of saying that is codependency is agreement at any cost. Like, I have to agree to your ideas, agree to your values, agree to your rules, and abandon. Like, I could actually disagree, but when I lose my capacity to disagree, I'm probably stepping into codependency,
which is the core tenet of religion. Follow our exact rules, jump in and do exactly what we say. Yeah. Abandon yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. Did you have other options?
Oh, yeah. That leads into the next one, which codependency is losing your sense of self. Mm-hmm. If I've lost, like actually everyone has a sense of self, and that is not meant to be the same self as everyone else. Like, God made me intentionally, and you intentionally, and Brie and Justin, and there is a sense of self. And often in Christianity that gets blurred, where we lose our sense of self for the sake of other people. And I think that is a trap that Christians fall into, because it feels like that idea of, oh, I'm denying myself. But having moments where I choose to love someone and like sacrifice is different than I've lost myself completely for the sake of others. That is not the same.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, even with my own journey with codependency in the church, it's there have been so many times where it's like I've idealized the people on the stage, and I've been like, well, they're more outgoing than me, or they have a bigger capacity than me. They're loving more people than me. And so then I'm doing all this behavior to look like them, but it's not actually fueled out of my own heart and out of my own compassion. It's fueled by shoulds. Like, I should look like A, B, and C. I should be doing all the things that these other people are doing. And that is actually losing my sense of self, where someone else might be doing it and it's fully them and they're fully alive. But when I'm not okay with me and with what my needs and what my capacities are, then I've actually disconnected from myself in order to do the thing I think is right or praised.
Yeah, I like that. And I really want to mention, when you guys are talking about this, because it's not actually just the church. We're specifically talking about it, but if you're a part of a political, I see this happening a lot right now. If you're part of a political group, you have to agree with them. Like, I see a lot of both sides, liberals and conservatives, that might be more moderate, but then their groups are becoming more extreme, and then it becomes cutthroat if you don't join us in this extreme, or now to be a moderate, you have to look like this and not this. And so any group can create codependency.
Yeah, 100%.
Because everybody wants to belong. It's a core human need. It's wired inside of us, because belonging is how we survived. If you were alone in the woods, you're eaten
by a tiger.
Yeah, those tiger woods.
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods. Those tiger woods.
Speaking of him.
Those tigers in the woods. But and so we have a survival instinct inside of us that is, we need to belong. And so we go into this, I will do whatever it takes to belong, because when I'm a part of a group, then I feel safer subconsciously in order to survive. So it's not just churches. It could be political parties. It could be softball team. It could be your tennis club.
Totally. I mean, most of us experienced it in church, but we learned it as kids in our family systems. Like, church reinforced the system. Yeah. But most of us, like, I have felt it in church and in the religious system, but I learned it in my family where, oh, mom's not okay, and if I do X, Y, Z, then she'll be okay with me, and I'll get the love I need. Oh, dad is angry, so if we tiptoe, like, oh, if he comes home and he's mad, but I've cleaned this room and we're gonna like tiptoe around him, then it'll be okay. So it's just, I took a system that I learned in my family to cope and exist, and I plugged me in that system into church, or me in that system into politics, or me in that system into business. Yeah,
that's true. It's any It's anywhere. You can learn it in the church. You can learn it in your family. You can learn it in your school. Codependency is one of the most common human issues, but we're specifically going to talk for the rest of today just about church. But I'm wanting people to not villainize the church because it really doesn't matter. We all have the tendency to do this.
Church did not create codependency. It existed before church. It is in humanity to exist.
Yeah.
It's one of the coping things we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in our humanity, basically, ultimately, all of what you're saying is in our humanity, we've taken it and applied it to our faith, our religion, our institutions. That's it.
Yeah. Humans show up in every institution, and the church is just one of those that shows up in.
Yep.
So all of human systems will show up in that system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other?
Yeah. Another one I put, or I was thinking through is codependency is anytime where I feel controlled by others' behavior, their moods, their expectations, where I feel like a victim to their expectations or their behaviors because I've actually lost my sense of self, and now what they want and they need and how they feel decides how I get to be okay.
Yeah. So instead of like, do I feel good about my life choice that I'm making? It's, oh my God, but what if they don't like my life choice that I'm making?
Codependency shows up in relationships, whether it's God or friends in church or leaders or anyone, in the sense of none of my needs get to count. So I've denied all my needs for whatever it is. So I think I see that in like, if you were like missionaries, sometimes can be codependent because it's like, oh, I gave up all my needs. I don't need anything. I'm just serving the Lord. And they lose the fact that actually God created every person to have needs. Mm-hmm. Like needs aren't an accident.
Right.
God created us to be needy. And so if I've lost the sense of knowing that I have needs and getting those needs met, I probably stepped into codependency because I've lost myself.
Right.
What would you say to deny yourself and take up the cross conversations?
Yes, I was literally just thinking about that. I do think there is a difference in laying my life down in a way of I will serve people and laying my life in the way of I've completely lost who I am. Which, if you look at Jesus, he is the Savior. He died. He set humanity free. He came and he served, but he didn't lose who he was. Right. He didn't lose himself to everyone else. He didn't lose his values. He still had a very strong sense of self. So I think the difference is I can have, outside of codependency, I still have a sense of self, even if I'm choosing to serve. And I can choose to serve or I can choose not to. There are like both moments, and you see both in Jesus.
But they come from a place of decision, like powerful decision making.
Oh, a great verse is, no one takes my life from me.
Yes. That's
Jesus says, but I willingly choose. I don't know what actually the verse
no
says.
one can take my life from me. I lay it down.
Yeah. Which is him literally saying, like, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm not doing this because you want me to.
Yes.
I'm not doing this because I'm doing this as a free will choice.
In codependency, you lose your choice in love. Mm-hmm. Codependent love means there's not a choice. It's a compulsion. I have to do it versus, oh, I just chose this moment of love.
Right.
And I can choose a moment of love and it can cost me.
Yeah,
but I chose that moment.
I chose to deny myself in this moment where I'd want to do this or I'd want to, have it this way. And I go, no, actually, I want to love in this way.
Yeah. Well, and it's an interesting thing about Jesus not being codependent because he disagreed with people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the forms of codependency is I have to agree with you in order to make you happy, to make you feel good. Like Jesus was not trying to make the disciples feel good all the time.
Totally.
And that's what a lot of, but he also wasn't like being an a-hole either. He just had a sense of self.
Yes. And that's what I think when you look at him, even... And here I have like, sometimes he had a voice and sometimes he didn't. Mm-hmm. There's no, outside of codependency, there's no, it's not the rules. It's what is actually right for me in that moment. It's relationship with yourself and with God. Because sometimes like he's with, what's his name? At the cross and the guy who's the leader.
Pontius Pilate?
Yeah. And he's like, defend yourself. And Jesus says nothing.
Yeah.
No, I don't need to defend myself.
Yeah.
But then other times he's like, oh, you're a whitewashed tomb.
Yeah.
So he has a voice in some scenarios. And some scenarios he doesn't. And it's not because of powerlessness or of fear. It's actually, I have a sense of myself and who I am. And in this moment, it actually matters to say something. I feel like it's right for me. And in this moment, I actually don't need to defend myself.
Totally.
It really is. Sorry.
If you're lost in codependency, you can't make that choice.
Yeah, because you're just following the rules.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's the rules matter more than who you actually are and what your own internal world view is saying. Yes. What were you going to say, Brie?
I was going to say it's interesting because I feel like Jesus had this dynamic personality and this dynamic way of interacting with people. But so often in the church, we just glorify the moments where he did lay his life down, deny his needs, not say anything. And we develop whole doctrines around it where we develop a doctrine of voicelessness. Like anyone can treat me terribly and it's fine because of those few moments where Jesus is silent. We ignore the moments where he was really confrontational, where he was calling people out, where he was saying things people don't like. And I see this in the church a lot, that we often make this very like meek image of Jesus, of like, he always served. He gave people whatever they wanted. He did all of these things. And it's just not the full picture.
Well, a great example would be like when they call him because Lazarus is sick and Jesus is like, I'm going to finish doing what I was doing before I come there.
Totally.
And it was like, that is a very non-codependent thing to do.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm going to like, so in churches, it's like, drop everything right now because that's the way to love people. Who cares if it, like, I've seen this happen before where people will literally not go to their kids' games because they need to take care of somebody right then who's in an emergency right then. And, or like they don't take care of their family because of whatever crisis there is. And that's what loving people is. And you watch Jesus, he very much, I mean, he went completely out of his way to go be with them and he cried with them and felt, but he also didn't do it on their terms.
Totally. I think all the time Jesus was not controlled by need. In codependency, need decides how I live my life. But you look at him and he's like, oh, the need would say he's going to die. I have to go right now. But he actually knew, I'm actually supposed to meet this person. And so that need doesn't dictate my next step. Or there can be an entire crowd, which feels like more need, right? There's more people, but he knows I'm actually supposed to reach that person across the water. So I get in the boat with my disciples and we go over and there's one person. And so he was on an intentional mission of his relationship journey with God, not on a need-based deciding how I live my life.
Yes, which is when you're taught that giving up your rights and taking care of everyone's needs is most important, you're not looking for the nuance. And I want people to listen to this in a balanced way because you've got to figure out who you are. If you are the person that never lays your life down, then you need to look at Jesus's life and see how often he gave up what could have been comfortable for him in order to love others.
Yeah, because there's some of you that never sacrificed anything or rarely ever sacrificed anything and rarely can be inconvenienced by anything else. Like that's a huge thing where you need to stop and be like, oh, I need to get off the side.
And sacrifice actually is very fulfilling and rewarding. To give up your rights or to give up what you want in order to love someone else is a beautiful experience. But then there's a lot of you out there who are so good at giving up your rights and laying down, your stuff that you just end up
not existing.
Yeah.
Totally. Which this really is the balance. And we're going to talk about it where Abby is going to specifically share her like relation from God about loving others and loving yourself. Because really what we're describing is both sides.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to love yourself and love others. It is both. And if you're stuck in one side, so the other side where it's like they never give love or they never go out of their way to serve, they're stuck in loving just themselves, and that's narcissism.
Yep.
But what we're talking about is people who get lost in I only love others and I never take care of myself.
Or I love others most of the time and don't take
that's
care
true.
of
Never
myself.
is extreme, but like I often go without for the sake of everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very codependent. And, it's interesting because Jesus really did, I think he had to be a 9'8" or an 8'9".
I think it was 8'9".
I always think that.
You and Justin, he's the same as you.
8'9".
We all know.
Yeah. I mean, he had to work through a lot of crap if he was an 8 to get to where, but I mean, it did say he was like despised from youth and like knew what pain and rejection was, but he had a strong sense of self, and it is meant to empower us. There is both that him meeting people where they were at and him being affectable.
Yeah.
So he allowed people to affect him, but then he also didn't allow people to dictate who he should be.
Yeah. I literally was thinking like, he was moved by compassion.
Yes.
So to be like, I was moved by compassion when I saw that there was a widow whose son died.
Yes.
And I know that if he's dead, she's basically like a street person because they couldn't get jobs. It was like your child took care of you.
Yeah.
But he was not controlled by compassion.
Right.
I'm sure he felt a lot of compassion for a lot of people. And so he could both be moved and not have compassion decide how he lived his life.
Yeah, because otherwise he would have had compassion fatigue.
Yeah, just like he had compassion for Lazarus, but still could say, that's not my step yet.
Yeah. It's very true. And most of the time churches don't teach you how to learn how to be connected to yourself enough to follow your divine inspiration, because we teach people not to trust themselves. I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, and she's like, I wish that I would have learned that I should trust myself, that there was intuition inside of me, that I did have things that could lead me, that I've spent my whole life shoving all those things down. And when people abandon themselves for the church over and over again, they eventually snap.
Totally.
Always. They eventually snap, and then they're like, F you. And it goes from I give all of my life to you to I now am in control and I do everything that I want because it feels good.
Totally.
And both extremes hurt people. I've seen a lot of people, like they just leave their whole family because they've been they gave up themselves over and over and over again. And then one day their self said, you can't keep doing this.
Totally. I always think you will at some point, you cannot abandon yourself for that long for someone else without eventually hating the someone else that you abandoned yourself for. Because eventually your heart is going to be like, that person is the reason, or that thing, or God, or 1000%. The system, whatever it is. If I had to abandon me over and over and over and over for that person, I will end in bitterness.
Yeah.
Now, you didn't actually have to, but like what it feels like is I had to make this choice for that person, or for God, or for the lost, or for the mission.
Yeah.
Eventually, you will despise the thing that you ran yourself over for enough.
And it's interesting. There's a side note that anger, frustration is wrongly placed. Like a lot of times I'll talk to clients and they'll be like, yeah, I just hate this person because da 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 da. I'm like, no, you're really angry with the person in the mirror.
Right.
Because you haven't drawn correct boundaries and taken care of yourself well. Your soul is yelling at you by yelling at someone else. It doesn't have the language to say, no, you're the problem. You just had no boundaries with people and I suffered.
Yeah. I mean, a great example of this in our marriage, I ran over my own boundaries in the beginning of our marriage, often with your rage, because I wanted to make sure that you were okay and that things would get better. And then one day my insides snapped and could not do that anymore, which was not really fair for you. Because you didn't know that was, happening. And my reconciliation journey, so much of it has been having to reconcile with myself for all the places that I ran over myself because of what I thought it was doing. I thought that it was helping you. I thought that it was love. I thought that it was, but now I can look back and see it was codependency.
Totally.
I just didn't know. But that's what will happen. You'll abandon yourself until one day it won't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, everyone needs love, including you.
And everyone needs boundaries, and everybody needs time and energy and to take care of their life.
Yep. I love this idea. I think this verse is great in the sense of like, Jesus literally didn't disown who he was. In 2 Timothy, it says, even if we are faithless, he remains faithful because he cannot disown himself. So he's literally like, oh, no matter, it doesn't matter if you're faithful. It doesn't matter if you follow the rules. It doesn't matter if you believe enough. Faith is there because I cannot disown myself. My entity is set, regardless of your actions, regardless of what you do, regardless of if you believe enough. And that like stability of him being connected to like, oh, I can't disown myself.
Right.
Is what we're talking about of, oh, other people can do things. You might have someone who doesn't believe or someone who acts crazy, but if you're connected to self, you can be okay.
Yeah, I love that so much because we grew up, most of the time parents will be like, don't make me angry. You made me feel this way, which is the idea that other people can affect your internal world. And what Jesus is really saying in that is, y'all can be crazy. I'm going to be me no matter what. And who I am is faithful. And who I am is loving. And who I am is good. Like, we can't make God sad. Like, is he affected by us? Yes. But like, do we make him sad? No. Like, because he actually is joy, and he can be joy. He can be joy at all times. However, he allows us to affect him, which is very kind.
Right. What you're saying is God is not powerless to his creation.
Yeah, he's not powerless to if we do things right or wrong. And I learned so much shame because growing up in the church, it was like if I did the wrong thing, then I was destroying God's day. If I made the wrong choice, then God was really upset.
Had a bad thought. You threw his day off.
Yeah.
And I do think that's such a thing we learn in the church is like this this need to fix things around us, either to fix God or to fix other people's emotions, to fix their sadness, to fix their pain, to rescue them. Yeah. Because being a good Christian means making everybody else okay, which is a core part of codependency.
Yeah, and not only that, but we're taught within the environment that we have all the answers. Because Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and we have that. And so we have all the answers, and we need to give those answers away. So that codependency, that sense of codependency kicks in because you're like, oh, I know
better than you.
I know better than you.
Fix your life.
And I'm supposed to fix your life, and I'm supposed to like go out of my way and spend all my energy making sure that happens, which is very arrogant in the first place, you know?
Yeah. I had this conversation I had with my friend the other day. I was literally talking to her about a life choice she was making, and she was like, well, what do you think about this? And I was like, well, this is my opinion. And I said, but I'm not listening to you trying to figure out if you're making the right life choices or not. I'm not listening to you trying to judge if I think you should make a different decision or not. I'm literally just listening to be with you in this process and wanting to understand you. And she was like, but Christians don't do that. They all want to tell me if I'm doing right or wrong. And I was like, yeah, because people are scared of allowing people to go on the journey of figuring out who they are and their own version of like who their self is, you know, their sense of self, figuring that out. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I understand you've spent years in church and you have a lot of pain from that. Now you're trying to figure out how to walk that out. And yeah, it might be messy and painful. It's not my job to fix you or to fix where your journey ends up. Like, I can actually trust God with you. I can trust Holy Spirit with you. She's like, I wish that people believe this. I was like, me too. But but it's the idea of we can allow people to go on their journey and just stay in connection with them.
Totally.
Not I have to fix. Jesus didn't fix everything about his disciples' lives.
He didn't. Even I was thinking, like, Jesus felt fine letting people struggle through things.
Yeah.
Like, even the verse is like, in this world you'll have trouble, but I've overcome the world. So it's like, oh, there's gonna be hard stuff. Like, he wasn't like, in this world everything's perfect because I'm Jesus. He's like, no, you're gonna struggle. And I'll overcome the world, so there's hope, but you're gonna struggle. And even I was reading this the other day, I think it's so funny because it is the idea, like, he was okay letting people, if you never have to struggle, it's hard to learn things. Like, how could the disciples learn faith if they never had to use faith?
Yeah.
And the only way to use faith is, oh, there's this thing in front of me where I need faith. Mm-hmm. And I was reading in, it's in Mark, and Jesus disperses the crowd and says goodbye to his disciples. And then he slipped away to the mountain to pray. And then it says, as night fell, the boat was in the middle of the lake and Jesus was alone on land. So it's night. It just became nighttime. The wind was against the disciples and he could see that they were straining at the oars. So he's like, oh, they're straining. It's hard. The wind's at the boat. And then it says, oh, they're trying to make headway. And then it says, when it was almost morning, Jesus came to them. So that means he saw them struggling, like nightfall. So it's like, it just became evening. And he's like, oh, they're struggling at the oars. The wind's happening. They're trying to make it work. They're not okay.
He let it happen.
And he's like, and I needed to get away. And so I let it happen. It wasn't morning until he decided to go out. And often we are not okay with letting people struggle because we feel like the good Christian thing to do or the right loving thing is to fix their problem or save them from the problem.
I used to be a lot like that. And then I got to a point where I'm like, okay, got a mess there, huh? How are you going to figure that out? What are you going to do with that? Okay, it's going to hurt for a while.
Yeah.
Cool.
And it's interesting where I think I see in the church either there's this compulsive need to fix the people around us, or you see like there's not a permission for mess. Like it creates a huge system of performance. Every decision is insanely high stakes. You have leaders being like, well, is that the right decision? Did you pray on that? Like, because they're afraid of people making messes. Because if they make messes, then I have to fix them.
Right.
And Jesus wasn't like that. He surrounded himself with messy people.
Yes.
They were messy the whole time. His disciples, hot mess.
Also, after he died,
still a mess.
Totally.
They're still fighting over things and trying to figure out.
He did not fix them before he left. They spent time face to face with Jesus.
And they weren't fixed.
On earth.
Yeah.
On earth. And he didn't fix them. He was like, all right, well, you've seen me. Work it out.
Totally.
Yeah, and how many leaders feel like they have to fix everyone following them?
That's so true.
Yeah.
People are so afraid what the people around them will portray about who they are.
Yeah.
Jesus let people represent who he was. They like became the image of who
Apostles.
he is.
Yeah.
And they were crazy.
Yeah, they're like, you know what, we should call down fire on that city. He's like, no, we shouldn't.
You don't need to do that.
But he was so kind about it, but still firm.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not what we do. But the concept would be there's a lot of messes that they were still involved in. If you think even like, didn't Paul and Barnabas have to split up? At one point, there's like multiple people that had to split up.
Ooh, drama.
There was drama.
Totally. I think all the time, and
The real world,
I was going to share this in a different one, but it's fine.
I'd watch that show.
Yes, you would.
I think all the time, like, people think, oh, once I have an encounter with God, I'll be fine. Like, my humanity won't follow me.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny, like, Peter had so encountered God that his shadow healed people. So I don't know about you, but like, I'm not walking around people like on the streets and they like see my shadow and all of a sudden they're like eyes open or like they were crippled and now they're walking because of my shadow. That's never happened to me.
Yeah.
But I imagine Peter probably had a revelation of God's nature for that to be part of his lifestyle.
Yeah.
And after that, Paul has to be like, bro, you're doing the thing again where you remove from the crowd because you're afraid of people's approval.
Totally.
So after he had the encounter, after his life was changed, after he's the one that the church is built upon him, and he's like really the first one evangelizing to the Gentiles.
Yeah.
But
also still had fear of man about doing that.
Yeah. And he had the revelation from God. God showed him the image of the food coming down from heaven. So he's the one who knew, oh, God's going to speak and move in the Gentiles. And still, even though he's the one with the revelation, he's scared of people's opinions.
Yeah.
And so Paul has to call him out because like you're leading other people astray.
Right.
Because the second the religious leaders come, you remove yourself from the Gentiles.
Yeah.
And that still happened.
After he had encountered God enough to be transformed.
Yes. Jesus didn't need him to be fixed, didn't need him to be better than that, was okay with knowing very well, like, he's got fear of man. He's going to cause messes, and he's going to tell everybody about me. Go get him, Peter.
The opposite of codependency isn't letting people do whatever the F they want, though.
Totally.
The opposite of codependency isn't like, well, you can just do whatever and it can affect us however. Because the opposite is that we have boundaries. Like, you can decide that you want to explore your feelings about our marriage, but if you are going to explore those feelings with other women, we're going to have some boundary issues.
Why?
Or like you can explore like, hey, I'm so glad that you're going on the journey of learning how to not serve, but also there's going to be times that we need you to contribute.
Totally.
Like, because it isn't realistic. People are so black and white in extremes that they like want to just throw one thing out.
Yeah,
they're
the
like,
pendulum swing to deal with it.
Yeah, like, oh well, I've served the church my whole life and I didn't know who I was, and so now I'm not going to serve ever again. And we jump from extreme to extreme, or like we don't put boundaries on. Like, hey, it's okay for you to be going on this journey, but there are things you can't do that affect other people.
Totally. And I think whenever you see extremes, you see that they are coping mechanisms. Like narcissism isn't that you're inherently bad. It's just another coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism that says, I was empty for so long that now I'm self-protecting because I feel so empty inside.
Yes.
And so I've taken on this narcissism because it says I can protect myself.
Yes.
So either end of the spectrum is someone who's in pain, someone who doesn't actually know what's going on inside of them, and someone who's reacting. Yeah. So the truth is, if I learn to value myself, if I learn to be connected to what I need, if I learn to have healthy boundaries, I am not going to become narcissistic, because narcissism is another protector.
Yes.
If I'm connected to what I need, then I can give really freely, and I can know when I have capacity and when I don't, and live in balance.
Which is a lot what Jesus did. There were lots of times when he would see a crowd and would say he was moved with compassion and healed healed all who were sick. And then there were times that he would be like, I'm going to go be by myself. Mm-hmm. And so there was a constant ebb and flow of, I'm giving my life, I'm protecting myself. I'm giving my life, I'm protecting myself.
Yeah, like Jesus had needs.
Yeah.
Jesus, even in being the servant he was, I don't think any of you will actually ever sacrifice as much as Jesus did, because you will not take on the sin of all of humanity.
Right.
Probably.
And that was his sacrificial, ask. That was his mission as the Messiah. And he still had needs. Your mission will never be as big as his, so you get to have needs.
Yeah.
He had needs, even though the ask of him is greater than the ask will ever be for you.
Totally.
He even I think he had needs in the garden. I mean, it's like, hey, can you pray for me?
Yeah.
I'm about to you don't really understand.
Really hard thing.
I'm gonna this thing's happen. I need you to pray for me. And he was affected when really? You're sleeping? Yeah. I'm about to die and you guys can't even say to pray for me.
Yeah.
He had needs, and he was affected when the needs weren't met.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Or even him having needs is, I actually need to get away with God. I need to go with my dad. And I think that for him was the centering part, because there were so many things pulling. He's as human as you and I are. He was giving out all the time, and he knew, if I give out and do not receive, I'm not going to be okay. Yeah. I actually can't fulfill the mission I'm called to if I give out and do not receive. And so he made space to have time to receive. And the need, the pull on him is greater than anyone will have a pull on them. And he found time to receive.
Well, and there's nothing highlighted where the only place that it looks like he lost his mind was in the temple. He's like, This is not okay. But that was so deliberately thought out. That wasn't a provoked, reactionary moment. Mm-hmm. It was I see an injustice and I'm going to form a whip, and then I'm going to go in there and I'm going to let them know this isn't cool. But my point is that you don't see any just random reactionary explosions out of him. And I think it's because he actually removed himself repeatedly and went and got time for himself. Because when you have that much intense expectation, want, need, pull, and stuff like that, it would be easy to have a meltdown, because again, he's fully human, and to be like, oh my God, get away from me, you're taking too much from me. But there had to be something inside of Jesus where he actually was self-aware. You're talking about, I'm self-aware, I need to pull away. And there's probably moments where he's like, I could probably end Peter's life right now if he says that thing one more time. I probably need to go away.
Well, it's so funny. I think about the disciples, they would fail in most churches because Peter's chopping people's ears off. How many pastors?
Totally.
How many pastors have somebody on their team that would do that? You know what I mean?
Actually had the capacity to all of a sudden be like, I'm swinging this sword.
Totally.
Yeah. For you. For your sake.
Yeah, they never would be trusted in leadership these days.
The sons of thunder should we call down fire from heaven and burn them up?
Right.
It's you are clearly missing it. but you're the ones that I'm leading. How, like, if you're a codependent leader, that's like the worst. I am clearly failing as a leader because my followers want to burn everyone.
Yeah, they're bad. Yeah. And there's the story where they're literally fighting over who's going to be at Jesus's right hand. I mean, talk about selfish leaders, right? These are the people the pastor would like take them aside, have a talking to them, be like, listen, you need to deal with your heart things before you step back into leadership. But no.
Which he does say, you don't understand what you're asking.
That's true.
So he is like, this is the part where he did both. You can still be around and I see you and I want you to be part of what we're doing, and also
and I understand
you're missing it,
and also you're
we'll have a
missing
chat about it.
Yeah, and also this is the like, and you're I just had too many thoughts all at once.
Yeah,
I mean, I was just thinking about you don't even know what you're asking. Like, there's compassion and understanding of like, I understand why you're doing this, but also it's not actually logical if you understood my kingdom.
So good. What do you got there, Marcus? You look like your wheels are turning.
My wheels are turning. I think in codependency, you feel like a victim to other people because you feel controlled by what they want or what their expectations are. And I love, like, when you look at Jesus, he was not even controlled by the need to, like, what people thought saving people would be like, because his teachings were like, eat my flesh and drink my blood. If I am trying to win everyone over, if my goal is like, how do I make sure
I'm gonna articulate a little better than that.
That's what it says.
I know.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me. I was like, no, that's literally what the Bible says.
No, I'm like, if I'm him and I want to win people, I'm gonna articulate a little better. Like, let me explain my flesh and blood real quick to you and eating it.
And the crowd stopped following him. And he turns to his 12 disciples, are you going to abandon, like, are you going to turn also? So he's like, I was not in this just to get all the crowds to follow me.
Yes.
He was really okay understanding this is my purpose and I'm okay sticking to my purpose, even if everyone doesn't understand. And even if it doesn't look like success, because I just let the whole crowd leave because they get this really hard teaching.
Yeah, you can be offended by me. There's so many places where he was, which is another thing that I won't go too into, but everyone in their offense culture. But he really didn't care that people were offended. He was not PC. He was like, yeah, this is what I have to say. And you're going to be confused about it. You're going to talk poorly about me with it. You're going to spread rumors about what I just said. I don't even got to defend it. This is what I have to say to you. And that's it. And that's pretty powerful.
It is powerful. The truth is, Jesus was emotionally intelligent. He was connected to self-awareness.
Yeah. He was aware of what was going on inside enough to be able to use self-control. Yeah. And you talked about that in another episode, but self-control really is the ability to have awareness of what's going on so that you're not reacting out of a subconscious pain or subconscious coping mechanism. You're instead aware of yourself and why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. He was aware of himself and he was aware of human systems, which is why he had compassion. Like, oh, the reason that person's in prostitution is there's all these pain spots. Like he actually was really emotionally intelligent because he could connect to his self and his journey and his purpose and his calling. And with the people around him, he could see, oh, they're making that choice out of this thing. I'm not mad at Peter for that. I understand why he has that thing. I'm not mad at, and at the people, I understand how they got where they got. And that is him understanding humanity.
Yeah. And obviously compassion is really insightfulness. Compassion is that empathetic insightfulness, because everywhere he went, everything he did was based out of compassion. So he's saying Jesus decided to heal because he had compassion on them. He saw the state that they're in. He had compassion. And that means that, again, he had understanding. It was that emotional intelligence. This is what's going on for them. This is what they're working through. Everyone else is sitting around judging. Judgment doesn't have emotional intelligence, right?
Totally.
But compassion is.
Even the way that he healed people, often he would heal people in a way that understood the pain they were in.
Yeah.
And so I love it. It's like, oh no, he understood pain. He understood humanity. He was meeting them in the emotional experience they were having because he understood people have emotional experiences.
Yeah. I know. I like him.
That's so good.
Something else I thought, and actually I love this about the relationship in the Trinity was not codependent.
Yeah.
And he was inviting us, like when he invites us into relationship, really everything God did was, I have this awesome relationship and I'm going to create humans so they can be part of this awesome relationship.
Yeah.
And the awesome relationship was 3 different entities who are like, technically it's 3 in 1, but it's like they are different. Like there's Jesus, there's the Father, there's Holy Spirit. They all play different roles. They all have different purposes, and they all can like subservient to each other, but not lose themselves. Jesus was like, oh, it's good that I leave.
Yeah.
Like, you actually need the Spirit of truth to live inside of you.
Yes.
So it's good I leave. So he understood the value of Holy Spirit without losing his value.
Own value.
Yes.
Yes.
So they're a relationship where they serve each other without losing who they are.
Mm-hmm.
The Father was important, even though Jesus was really important, and they served different roles, and they both had value. And that is kind of what we're talking about in relationship is, to step into the Trinity relationship is to step into a relationship where I can serve and see value in other people and also understand my value and my purpose.
See that I have value
Yes.
as well. That is such a good analogy and so true. I think learning about, and we actually teach about this in Living Fully Alive, but learning about the relationship of the Trinity is such a valuable part of theology, because it really helps you see God differently when you see how God, the 3 in 1 interacts. The Shack is such a great movie or book, depending on which one you saw or read, in showing that relational dynamic where they all are enjoying each other, serving each other, and talking highly about the other. But I like that none of them, in order to lift one of the other ones up, had to put themselves down.
Yeah. Which really is what we're talking about. And it's the life model Jesus lived. And it is the relationship they're inviting us into, is for us to get to be the same like that, where it's, I can serve and I can like go low and I can give of myself and I can have value.
Yeah, because most of the time the way we learn to serve is that you matter more than me.
Yes.
Like making sure you're okay matters. And I was taught that in the church, like making sure unsaved people, I've seen so many times that people run over their boundaries because they're like, but I am supposed to, this is my testimony, is to give them whatever they want because they're not saved.
They need to see Jesus in my actions.
Yeah, but it's not I value also. I value me and I value you. It's just a value the other person with no regards. And they use the verse like, if somebody, hits you, turn the other cheek. And if somebody asks you for your coat, give them your closet. No, I'm just kidding. That's not in the Bible. But
that verse is there. Just that's not what the verse is. But the concept of like, if that's for this, give them all the things.
Yeah. And so people take that out of context because people have a really hard time reading the Bible with a balanced approach, a balanced idea. They're looking for extremes that are rules so that they can follow them and win.
I think in my journey with God, especially in my early years, believed, I'm already saved. So now the important thing is the most important is to save everyone else.
Yeah. That he cares about my soul.
Yes.
For the rest of my life.
My soul now, and I wouldn't have said it matters less, but it was it definitely matters more to save lost people. Yeah. And I think to God, it's saving lost people matters and your soul matters.
Yes.
And it was a huge change for me to realize, there is still value to God. That my heart matters and me being taken care of matters. And we're going to talk about a self-love one, but this was huge for me where God was like, me getting my full reward is you being fully alive.
Yeah.
And it shifted where, God still cares that I am on a wholeness journey because his reward, his payment is that my soul is fully alive. And that gets to really matter as much as, or on the same spectrum as other people needing to know him matters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a last side note on that part there, but I've had so many people who will come in and I'm trying to help them work out being powerful and stuff like that, and setting boundaries and having self-value, and they're like, yeah, but what if people don't get saved if I do that? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, what if I become this poor representation? And I'm like, poor representation? Well, well, if I say no and stuff and it hurts their feelings, and then I'm not being a good Christian, and then all of a sudden these bad things happen to them, and it's such high stakes. It's almost like bred in to people, like you have to be codependent or it's going to cost somebody their eternal
soul.
Yeah. That's so much pressure, and so it's beaten in. So it's great to hear, you know, your perspective on what you're even chatting about with where you see Jesus and stuff like that, because people need to be able to hear that to be like, oh, okay, then it's not all on me, and I can have some boundaries, and I can actually matter while other people matter, and if people are offended with me, that's okay. They'll work it out in their own soul. I'm not responsible to. Yeah, it's a big deal.
It is not truly love if you do not believe you're allowed to say no.
Exactly.
If you cannot say no, it is slavery.
Yes.
True love is, yeah, I want to say yes and I want to love. And also, I know I can say no. Like even Jesus knew, like, oh, I could step down off this cross if I wanted to.
100%.
But it's a choice I'm making.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even in the garden, he's like, take the cup from me. But actually, this is my journey.
This is my choice.
Yeah.
So he knew I could not do this if I wanted to, but it is the choice I'm making. And I think often we do not know we have a choice.
A choice out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And a choice where we'd be loved still, because most people are like, well, I can choose to not serve you, but then it means God will hate me.
Totally. And honestly, eventually, if you do not know you have a love choice, you will be bitter in loving people.
Yeah.
If you do not know you have a choice of love, you'll be controlling and loving people.
Yes.
Because you're loving them so they'll love you back because you have no love.
Or you're loving them so that they'll be good, so that you can feel safe or that you can feel valued.
So the purest form of love has choice in it, which is why God gave humanity choice, because he knew this is love, that you can have choice.
And it doesn't have an agenda.
I think churches don't know how to show this very well, and I don't pretend that I could do a church better. So, but there is this thing of like, love means we agree. And instead of like, I can let you be on your journey and I can disagree with you and we can still have connection.
Yeah.
We can there's still a place for you. You matter here without you having to be perfect already. And that's what so much codependency is, because we have to pretend to be better than we are so that we don't lose belonging.
Totally.
And that's not ever how, I mean, like the disciples, the cool thing is they were never pretending they were better than they were. Well, that's not true. They probably did pretend sometimes.
They were trying.
But they also were just like very openly idiots. You know what I mean? They were openly like, because I think he picked people who had strong enough personalities that they didn't just give up who they were. They just said the stupid thing they thought.
Totally.
And I think that there's something to be said for learning your sense of self so that you gets to operate out of that.
Yeah, it's so good.
God does not make mistakes in making humans, and he made each one of us different, and that's on purpose. Like he made you with your own soul, your own spirit, your own personality, because he likes that we are individuals.
The diversity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
God isn't like, oh, I should have made them all the same. He could have made us all the same.
Which is what pastors can often try to do, is get
That's
everyone to act the same and to make all the same decisions in the same ways, instead of that individual relationship where you are following God in your individual life.
Totally.
Learning and developing and growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have loved people both out of my codependency and out of choice. And I think love counts regardless, because God uses love.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be a beauty in like it feels different in my soul when I get to love out of choice than when I love out of I have to.
Yeah.
So really this is we want you to be loving people. Like I want people to love radically, and I want you to love out of a place where my soul is choosing this and it feels so good versus I'm living out of I have to, and it's actually there's a part of it that's hurting.
That's so
Yeah,
good.
I look back and we'll wrap this up. I look back on all of the codependent things I have done, and oftentimes people feel shame and get I remember you actually, I think we actually had a conversation about this, but I'm not sure. And I'm like, yeah, but love, like whether or not it, like I can look back and be like, oh, that was actually just codependent, but my intention in it was love.
Totally.
And my intention matters.
Yeah.
It matters to God. whether or not it was. So I never look back at things I did when I was religious and think like that didn't matter at all. I'm like, no, there was a gift in that. That was me doing what I thought I could do to love. That's in codependency. I look back, I'm like, I was trying to love. So that it counts, but it's not the fullness of what love could be. So if you're listening out there, one reason I wanted Marcus to come on here is I wanted churches to be able to start having, if they like invite you to speak at their churches about God and emotional health things, because I want to see churches begin to have new concepts of emotional health so that more people get whole and find joy and life inside of the institution.
With that said, where can they contact you, Marcus?
Yeah, I have a website. It's marcusmillerconsulting.com. If you just type that in and go there, there's like a submit form and you can type in, we'd love to have you speak, or we like this idea. And if you submit it, then we'll reach out.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I really love getting to hear from you. And I liked, Bree, your banter and your story made me pretty happy.
I'm glad that was my shining part of this podcast.
Yeah, that's why we had you.
Yep, totally.
You and I got to hang out over here a little bit more.
And Marcus actually, when I traveled and spoke before I got sick, Marcus came lots of places with me.
True.
Also spoke at those places. He's a great speaker, and you love having him there if you want to do that.
Yeah.
You can check out all of his resources as well. And if you like this conversation, share it with people. That's the best way to keep this thing moving forward.
Well, thanks for joining us, guys.
Sure thing. I love it.
Happy to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
All right. What? You just going to be silent over there, Abby? You say
I
goodbye?
thought I already said I said my piece.
Say goodbye.
And we love all
Goodbye.
of you because we want to, not because we have to.
Aww.
Later.